Right now, there are Scotch bottles on every liquor store shelf charging you a premium for mediocre whiskey inside a pretty package. And sitting right next to each one is something better, something with more flavour, more integrity, and often a lower price tag. The only difference is the marketing budget. Today we are going through 8 overpriced Scotch brands and matching each one with a bottle that delivers more whiskey for your money. These are not random alternatives. These are the bottles that distillery workers, bartenders, and competition judges keep going back to when nobody is watching. Number 1. The Macallan 12 Double Cask versus Glenallachie 12. The Macallan 12 Double Cask has become the Instagram whiskey. Around $65 to $75 for a bottle that is 43% alcohol by volume and chill filtered. They spent £140 million on a new distillery that looks like a Bond villain's lair, and the marketing budget behind this bottle is staggering. The result is a whiskey that looks expensive and tastes average. The sherry influence is there, but it is thin and one-dimensional compared to what that money could buy you elsewhere. Glenallachie 12 is the whiskey Macallan does not want you to find. Around $55 to $67, 46% alcohol by volume, non-chill filtered, no colouring added. Matured in Pedro Jimenez, Oloroso sherry and virgin oak casks under the guidance of Billy Walker, a Whiskey Magazine Hall of Fame inductee who took over the distillery in 2017 after Pernod Ricard decided to sell it. Since then, it has won World's Best Single Malt at the World Whiskies Awards twice, including the 2025 ceremony. Only one other distillery has ever won that title twice, and that is Hakushu in Japan. It also took double gold at the San Francisco World Spirits Competition in 2024 with a 95-point score. On the palate, you get butterscotch, honey, raisins, mocha, and marzipan. For less than Macallan 12, you get a whiskey that is literally judged the best single malt on earth. Twice. And it costs less. Number 2. Dalmore 12 versus Deanston 12. Dalmore 12 goes for around $65, 40% alcohol by volume chill filtered, caramel colouring added. You are paying for that stag head on the bottle because the liquid inside has been stripped of character through industrial processing. Whiskey reviewers consistently describe it as thin and underwhelming for the price. The stag logo is gorgeous, but you cannot drink a logo. Deanston 12 runs about $50 to $60 and delivers everything Dalmore cannot. 46.3% alcohol by volume, non-chill filtered, natural colour. The distillery sits in a converted cotton mill in the Scottish Highlands that dates back to 1785, originally designed by Sir Richard Arkwright, one of the pioneers of the Industrial Revolution. The building was a working cotton mill for 180 years before being converted into a distillery in 1966. The River Teith runs right alongside it, and Deanston uses that river to generate all of its own electricity through an on-site hydroelectric facility. They generate far more electricity than they need and sell the surplus back to the national grid. Their fermentation runs up to 100 hours, which is roughly double the industry standard, creating a distinctly waxy, fruity character. They were also the world's first certified organic Scotch distillery back in 2000. Their master distiller describes the whiskey's character as eating an orange like it is an apple, all that juice and texture wrapped in something you did not expect. It took double gold at the TAG Global Spirits Awards and gold at the International Spirits Challenge. More whiskey, more character, less money from a distillery that runs on river power instead of marketing budgets. Number 3. Glenfiddich 12 versus Loch Lomond 12. Glenfiddich 12 is the best-selling single malt in the world. It costs around $40 to $50 and it is 40% alcohol by volume. It is the definition of safe, designed for the broadest possible appeal, and that means it avoids anything that might be described as interesting. Light pear, a hint of oak, and then it is gone. You drink it, and 5 minutes later you have already forgotten what it tasted like. Glenfiddich wants to be the whiskey that offends nobody, and the trade-off is that it excites nobody either. Loch Lomond 12 costs about the same, around $40 to $60, and it is a completely different animal. It is 46% alcohol by volume, and it is non-chill filtered. The distillery sits on the bonny banks of Loch Lomond itself and does something almost nobody else in Scotland does. They run both traditional swan neck pot stills and rare straight neck stills with rectification plates, essentially column-like trays inside the still that give them extraordinary control over spirit character. They can produce everything from light and fruity to heavy and complex without ever leaving the building. On top of that, they are one of only 4 Scotch distilleries with their own on-site cooperage, checking, repairing and rejuvenating over 30,000 casks a year. When you control both your stills and your wood, you control your whiskey at a level most distilleries can only dream about. All of that paid off in 2024 when they won IWSC Scotch Whisky Producer of the Year, and the 12-year-old scored 98 out of 100 at the same competition, tying for the highest score given to any Scotch that year. For Glenfiddich money, you get a whiskey that is outperforming bottles at 3 times the price from a distillery with more hardware than most of its competitors combined. Number 4. Bowmore 12 versus Ledaig 10. Bowmore 12 is one of the most frustrating bottles in Scotch. It comes from the oldest distillery on Islay, founded in 1779, and the liquid has genuine potential. But they bottle it at 40%, chill filter it, add colouring, and sell it for $55 to $65. Independent bottlers who get their hands on single casks of Bowmore and release them at natural strength without filtration consistently produce whiskies that are crisper, more cohesive, and more flavourful. One prominent whiskey reviewer wrote that nearly every independent single-barrel Bowmore he has tried outperforms the official 12. The distillery makes great spirit. They just refuse to bottle it properly. Ledaig 10 comes from the Isle of Mull off the west coast of Scotland. It is the peated expression from Bowmore Distillery, 46.3%, non-chill filtered, no colouring. The peat comes from Port Ellen maltings on Islay, peated to 30 to 40 parts per million, which puts it in serious peat territory alongside the big Islay names. The result is medicinal smoke, sweet brine, honey, vanilla, and a maritime character that feels like a lost cousin of Islay without being a carbon copy. There is an earthy, almost campfire quality that sets it apart from the more iodine-driven Islay malts. It won Ralphie's Whisky of the Year in 2022, one of the most respected independent awards in Scotch, and was an OSWA Best Value finalist in both 2023 and 2024. Around $50 to $70, you get an uncompromised island peater doing what Bowmore should be doing, but refuses to. Number 5. Highland Park 12 versus Craigellachie 13. Highland Park 12 costs about $50 to $60 for a 43% whiskey from Orkney that is riding hard on Viking branding. Owned by Edrington, the same group behind Macallan, it has seen steady price increases while the quality conversation has shifted. The Viking imagery is everywhere, from the helmet on the box to the Norse mythology in the marketing. But branding does not improve the liquid. And at 43% with chill filtration, this whiskey could be delivering more for the price. Craigellachie 13 is one of the strangest and most rewarding whiskies in Speyside. It sells for around $55 to $67. It is 46% non-chill filtered and contains no added colouring. The distillery is one of the last in Scotland still using worm tub condensers instead of modern shell and tube systems. Worm tubs are old-fashioned copper coils submerged in wooden tanks of cold water, and they create less copper contact during condensation, which allows more of the heavier, meaty flavours through into the spirit. On top of that, the distillery fires its kilns with oil rather than steam, adding another layer of character that has all but disappeared from modern Scotch production. The combination creates a meaty, sulphurous, almost barbecue character that completely defies what you expect from Speyside. Think burnt pineapple, tropical fruit, hazelnuts, and a savoury backbone that has no business being this good. It took double gold at the San Francisco World Spirits Competition. For a few dollars more than Highland Park, you get a whiskey with a flavor profile that is genuinely unlike anything else on the shelf, made using production methods that most distilleries abandoned decades ago. If you're finding this helpful, consider subscribing. We cover Scotch and spirits every week, and the next 3 picks might be the most surprising ones on this list. Number 6. Oban 14 versus Scotia 15. Oban 14 has been a Diageo flagship for decades, running $90 to $115 depending on where you buy it. 43%, chill filtered with caramel colouring. It is a pleasant coastal Highland malt with notes of citrus, sea salt and stone fruit, and it has coasted on its classic malt's reputation, while the price has crept up relentlessly. The liquid has barely changed, but the price has nearly doubled over the last 10 years. Reviewers on major whiskey sites consistently say the price is ridiculous given how many similar or better whiskies exist for less. Scotia 15 comes from Campbelltown, one of the most overlooked whiskey regions in Scotland. In the late 1800s, Campbelltown was the whiskey capital of the world, with over 30 active distilleries crammed into a single small town on the Kintyre Peninsula. Overproduction, bad quality and prohibition killed most of them. Today there are 3. Scotia is one of the survivors, founded in 1832, and the 15-year-old is bottled at 46% with no chill filtration. The maturation starts in first fill bourbon casks and finishes in Oloroso sherry. Around $75 to $99, which is comparable to Oban or less, and you get coastal brine, green apple, apricot, vanilla, and a maritime salinity that Oban wishes it could deliver at that proof. Whiskey critics consistently put it alongside Springbank and Kilkerran as the quintessential Campbelltown experience. You are getting a living piece of Scotch history from a region that almost disappeared entirely for the same price as a corporate Diageo bottle that has been quietly getting worse value every year. Number 7. Glenmorangie 18 versus Benromach 15. Glenmorangie 18 runs $100 to $120 for a Highland single malt bottled at 43%. It comes in a gorgeous box, and the liquid is fine, floral and honeyed with some baking spice from 15 years in ex-bourbon casks followed by 3 years in Oloroso sherry. But at that price you are paying a real premium for packaging and brand recognition. The whiskey does not deliver complexity that matches the cost, and at 43% you are getting less intensity per dollar than you should at this tier. Benromach 15 is an independent, family-owned Speyside distillery, bottled at 43% for around $87 to $100. Owned by Gordon and MacPhail, one of the oldest independent bottlers in Scotland, Benromach is small, hands-on, and run by people who care about tradition over trendiness. They malt some of their own barley, use small stills, and focus on getting every step right rather than scaling up production. One respected whiskey writer described it as the bottle that reset his understanding of what single malt could be. Sweet, lightly smoky, a touch of spice, rich sherry influence, and a solid bourbon foundation all rolled into one. It tastes like every classic Scottish flavour packed into a single glass, without any one element dominating the others. For $20 less than Glenmorangie 18, you get a whiskey with more depth, more character, and more soul from a distillery that has been quietly earning respect while the big names have been raising prices. Number 8. Johnnie Walker Blue Label versus Compass Box Glasgow Blend. Johnnie Walker Blue Label typically runs $180 to $250. It is a blended Scotch, meaning it is a mix of malt and grain whiskies bottled at 40% alcohol by volume. Is it smooth? Absolutely. Is it worth the price of 3 or 4 excellent single malts combined? Not even close. Blue Label is the bottle people buy when they want to impress someone who does not know much about Scotch. The whiskey itself is pleasant, inoffensive, and utterly forgettable for what it costs. At $200+, pleasant is not good enough. Compass Box Glasgow Blend runs about $35 to $45. It is also a blend but built with a completely different philosophy. It has 65% malt content, which is almost double what most blends use, combining Highland and Loch single malts with lowland grain. It is matured in first-fill sherry-seasoned butts, bourbon barrels, and custom French oak casks. It is bottled at 43% alcohol by volume, non-chill filtered, natural colour. The company was founded in 2000 by John Glazer, who left his job as Johnnie Walker's marketing director at Diageo because he believed blended Scotch could be more than mass-produced filler. He literally walked away from one of the biggest marketing jobs in spirits to prove that blends deserve the same respect as single malts. The Glasgow blend is named after the city's historical preference for bigger, smokier whiskies, and the label features Glasgow's famous Wellington statue wearing its iconic traffic cone. On the palate, you get smoky peat, sherry fruit, salted dark chocolate, espresso, and toffee. Reviewers consistently say it puts common Johnnie Walker expressions to shame. If you want to impress a friend, spend smart. For value and flavour, Glasgow Blend beats Blue Label every time. If you found this video helpful, consider subscribing. We'll see you in the next one.